How we doing? I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. It is a Saturday night. We talk about books on Saturday nights. And it's been a while since we've chatted about a book. Hi, how we doing? I've been trying to get things done. I've looking at getting some upgrades for the computer so things are better. Last week we didn't have internet because I guess Optimum decided that was the best time to work on the lines. Don't know why, whatever. But we have a bunch of books to talk about, a bunch of things, and I thought we might change it up a little bit this week and chat about some other bookish stuff that I've been seeing going around. Excuse me. But how are you all doing? How is everything going? Life is a thing, I guess. I don't know. It is what it is, and it is indeed a year. I have been so busy May and June that I didn't even think about what I've been talking about or what I've been reading. I haven't actually had a lot of time to read a lot of fiction recently. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, history, specifically, for reasons that might be relevant for, things that might be happening in the near future here on the channel. And preparing certain, thoughts that might be important coming up for, reasons. Just reasons. Reasons that are totally not important. Yeah, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. That is indeed a lot of not true. But I could share some information coming soon. But I guess, oh, there you go. Thank you, Crit. I appreciate it. I had been feeling a little out of it. Mostly just because it's May and June and lots of things are happening and behind the scenes that I'm trying to take care of. Hopefully soon there'll be even more things to showcase, and I might drop a little teeny tiny hint spoiler. Also, for those of you who follow me in my TTRPG stuff, you know that we had the finale of Vampire the Masquerade Montreal by Night Monday. Well, we had the wrap up Monday. We had the finale a week ago Monday, and still kind of sitting in my emotions about that. Epic finale that was. It's 6 hours long. It was totally deserved. Just saying, we deserved every single minute of that. But books that I have been reading. I guess we should start there, because then I have a couple other things I wanted to, kind of bookish things I wanted to talk about, but we should start about books specifically that I have read recently we'll start with fiction. So, I read last month, May, I read A Marvelous April, I read Marvelous Light. Anyways, I read A Marvelous Light, which is the first book in this trilogy by Freya Marska, and then, which is the Edwardian magical realism uber gay book. And the sequel, book 2, is A Restless Truth, and where book one is very gay. This one is very sapphic. This is a very nice lesbian romance. And my problem with this book is I liked the mystery. I thought the mystery was well done. I thought the continued world building, great. The writing, still really good. I didn't like the main character. Because I don't... The main character in this book is the younger sister of the main character, one of the main characters in A Marvelous Light, which is the first book. And I don't like her. I want to like her. It's one of those, like, on paper characters I should like. But for me, she just didn't... I was not a fan of Maud. And then, Violet is interesting, and I want to say I liked her more than Maud, but I think part of that is I just didn't dislike her as much as I disliked Maud. I felt that this book was really good, and I don't want to be negative on the book, because I think the book could be really work for a lot of people. And I think that the book, the story itself was really entertaining. I'm really intrigued in this world building. I'm intrigued to see where this plot goes next. I just did not like Maud. She suffered from little sister syndrome in such a way that I felt that it really was a detriment to her character, because she's interesting. She wants to be a suffragette. She wants to study and go to Oxford, and we're on a ship, on a steamer, crossing, you know, doing all of these things and meeting Lord Hawthorne again, who is, honestly, Lord Hawthorne. I'm intrigued about Lord Hawthorne because he's in book 3, okay? Lord Hawthorne has been sprinkled in and taunted to us through 2 books. I'm looking forward to book 3 to find out about Lord Hawthorne. I did not feel that the plot in this suffered from middle book syndrome the way some middle books of a trilogy could. I felt it was really its own the mystery itself, the murder mystery in this book is enough. It is still tied to the plot of book 1 in the overarching plot, but the mystery itself was self-contained enough that it didn't feel like it was suffering from middle book syndrome. I just did not like Maud. And that could just be a me thing. Like, right? Like, this is... And that's the thing, is, like, I try not to be too negative about books, because I know that there's an audience for every book everywhere. And I feel like I didn't really want Maud's... Here's what it is. I didn't want Maud's story. When I ended book 1, I was more intrigued with other female characters in that book than Maud, because Maud isn't actually, like, she is in the book. She's a presence, but in book 1, in A Marvelous Light, Robin is the older brother. He's the focus of the story. You meet her in one chapter where he's talking to her about what their family situation is, what they're trying to deal with. You meet her early in book 1 for that situation. And then you meet her later, and it becomes a catalyst for she becomes a catalyst in her little sister antics for a tension point between Edwin and Robin. But she's not really a in-depth character in any way. versus there are these multiple other female characters that are in book one that I would have been much more interested in, not the least of which is the typist who is Robin's typist, who is born to a magical family, is not herself magical, and is half Indian and half English. And you're like, she is so much more interesting, particularly her complex timeline dynamic with her twin sister, her dynamic with Robin, her dynamic with Edwin, and the authority and tension that she has with being non-magical in a magical situation, being half Indian and half white, or half English in Edwardian period England, and how that could be a tension. Maud is just 19 and really English upper class. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. You're a suffragette and you want to go to Oxford. Good for you. But it's not the interesting character, and I didn't find her interesting. Other people may. Violet wasn't so bad. Violet is the magician, but she's also an actress. Welcome in, Faison. We were talking about the sequel to A Marvelous Light, which is A Restless Truth, and while I enjoyed the plot, and I enjoyed the mystery, and I enjoyed the writing, I'm not a fan of Maud, who is the main character, and that's why this is not as good this book is not to my taste as much as Marvelous Light was, but I am looking forward to book 3. We're picking up the conclusion of the trilogy, and now I can't remember what the title of that one is, because I'm going to go get it from the library. So it's the Last Binding trilogy, and book 3 is A Power Unbound. And I think I'm going to like A Power Unbound more than A Restless Truth, because A Power Unbound is finally going to give us Lord Hawthorne's story. And book 1 deals with Robin and Edwin and the establishing of this universe and all of, this very Edwardian magical realism. And Lord Hawthorne is mentioned and is introduced as a character. We find out bits and pieces about his tension going on there, versus Maud, who is just the little sister and just kind of shows up and in book 1 and isn't really interesting, versus all the other interesting women who are in book 1 that I would be much more interested in following. And then book 3, which is Power Unbound, we're gonna get Lord Hawthorne. I'm looking forward to that, so that's next on the list. I think people would really like this. It's a very interesting sapphic romance. I think it's a interesting look. It also intrigues me that the style of dress on the cover is slightly wrong. Because it's really hard to pinpoint, but we know that this is set after World War One, right? Like, this is set after World War One. They acknowledge that the book is in World War One, or that one of the characters are dealing with the aftermath of World War One. They, Lord Hawthorne is mentioned as possibly having like shell shock or something. So we know that World War One has happened. So we know it's after 1918. So we're in the early 1920s, roughly. And we're still, like, styling on the 1910s. I'm very intrigued by this. and I don't think it's obvious in the book, but it's very striking in the design of the covers. So yeah, it's like you didn't dress them as flappers, but that's still a little off. I mean, it's very weird. And it's like, okay, I understand we're dealing with the London upper classes, the English upper classes, and various things, and what's happening, and we're on a boat going to back to England from wherever, I forgot. Anyways, looking forward to book 3. Book 2 was okay. I think a lot of people will really enjoy it. It was also interesting to see a period sapphic romance, magical realism novel that was done pretty okay. I thought the mystery was pretty good. So yeah. Not a fave, but not really a miss. Now to catch up on chat. Oh, Faison is reading A Wizard of Earthsea. Yeah, Ged is very difficult to like, and he's supposed to be. I don't think you're supposed to like Ged so much as understand eventually where he's coming from and follow his growth in that not trilogy, which isn't really a trilogy anymore. Oh, and Coldrake finished on Basilisk Station. Welcome to the Honorverse. Join us. We have polyamory and talking cats. And occasionally, murder! And Honor Harrington is one of my favorite badass female characters. And you're waiting for a deal on all the books. Good luck, Faye. But to be fair, that's true. My problem is that all of the, like, the older editions, they were never published as like a hardback. So you have to get, they were published as, mass market paperback, because that's what you were. Like, these were 1990s Tor and Bane fantasy novels or science fiction novels that were published as mass market paperback. They were never expected to be considered great art, but they are. And now getting them is difficult. Ooh. You say sometimes Humble Bundles has them? Ooh, we should check that. I mean, just to see. I mean, I hashtag not sponsored, but so sometimes they can get interesting. That could be really interesting. Something to keep an eye out for. Yeah, I definitely have to keep an eye out for something like that. I know Bane does like charity bundles pretty frequently. Why? So I guess yeah, Libby or Overdrive. I know that like my library has a couple of them, but they're not all in order. And I do, and Coldrake is correct. On Basilisk Station is one of the free Bane downloads. By the way, Bane recognizes that, sometimes if you give if you give them a taste for free, they'll come back and buy everything. That's That's happened before. But so I do recommend the Honor Harrington verse. I recommend all of. Would you like to buy a sci-fi novel? The first one's free. How Faye just said I did finally get around to Murderbot Diaries. I know people who've read them and really like the novellas, and was not a big fan of the bigger novel, but really still liked the novellas. Think I'm gonna have to add that to the TBR. Look, there's a lot right now on the TBR. The TBR is not short. It is not by any means reduced. And so I'm using I've had a Goodreads, but now I have started using Storygraph because I like its design better. I like its UI. I also like its function. I don't feel it's also not owned by Amazon. So I'm liking that as kind of. I also love the fact that it has an app on my phone that includes a UPC scanner function. So if I'm in the library, I can just scan the barcode and it gets added to my TBR. Or I'm in a bookstore and it does the same thing, and then that way I remember books so much faster. That's Storygraph. And it includes, it also has you can sort, and you have like a little pie graph chart sorting by your, designed by your moods, page number, what you're reading, what's the breakdown, just like so much more detail oriented. It does connect to, you can connect it to your Goodreads if you want. But it's because of that, it's like I have my entire list of things that I'm intrigued by and have people have mentioned or something, and so I add it to this, and then I can go back. And so what I've started doing is doing this so that I can go back and find them easier and review. It links to a really great review. It makes the reviewing system, it makes it really easy for me to follow, and makes it easy to search. I just like its functionality so much better. But like, for example, I should sort authors A to Z. Okay, so I've got, those are short stories. Okay, so there are a couple new releases coming out that I'm intrigued by. There's some more oh, you did get the third Honor Harrington book. There you go. There's some interesting books that, like, I'm putting on this list to see what happens. And particularly this is useful when I get to things like books that people are recommending, or, you know, people have been talking on lists or whatever, and therefore I'm like, okay, let me just jot it down in the app, and then I can go into the library and be like, hey, do you have any of these books? Let me check them out. Let me see. And if you have it, then I can play with my test for a book, which is, do I want to read the first, you know, do I want to read beyond the first page? My first page test. If I read the first page and then want to flip the page, then I will pick up the book and read it. Face on, if you are having Kindle Unlimited, I do recommend it. I think there's a bunch of indie authors I know who are publishing who you on Kindle Unlimited, and considering the way Kindle has changed their royalty schematic, anyone who has Kindle Unlimited, I don't use it. I reading ebooks is a struggle for me. It's not an easy thing for me to do. And just the way that formats doesn't always work for me. So but I know a lot of people on there. Yeah, I'm not. It'll be interesting. All right, so on to the next fiction book that I've finished, and that is The Foxwife by Yangshi Chu, I think. I wish I had an audio pronunciation of this name, but I do not. So, The Foxwife, first I want to give, I loved this book. I loved this book. I enjoyed this book, but it was a real slog for me to get through. And by that I mean it took me a week to read, and that was probably because I read this book in 80-degree weather. And for me, like, I'm kind of a mood reader, but I'm also like a completionist mood reader. So if I pick up a book that I think I'm going to enjoy and there's a rest of the series, I'll just read the rest of the series before I read anything else. And then I'll just be like, ooh, I'm in the mood to read this entire set by this author. I'll go and read all of that. So I'm one of those kind of people. This is a very interesting book, and I probably would have really, really enjoyed it as like a winter novel, or like just one of those books that you wanted to like curl up in bed with a cup of tea and like an Afghan and just maybe having snow falling lightly out the window kind of book vibe. Which was slightly hard for me to read in 80-degree weather on the back porch in nothing. And I really, really enjoyed this. I felt that the mystery at the center of the book, okay. So, premise. Manchuria, 1908. In the last years of the dying Qing Empire, a courtesan is found frozen in a doorway. Her death is clouded by rumors of foxes, which are believed to lure people by transforming themselves into beautiful women and handsome men. Bao, a detective with an uncanny ability to sniff out the truth, is hired to uncover the dead woman's identity. Since childhood, Bao has been intrigued by the fox gods, yet they've remained tantalizingly out of reach, until perhaps now. Meanwhile, a family who owns a famous Chinese medicine shop can cure ailments, but can't escape the curse that afflicts them. Their eldest sons die before their 24th birthday. When a disruptively winsome servant named Snow enters the household, the family's luck seems to change. Or does it? Snow is a creature of many secrets, but most of all, she's a mother seeking vengeance for her lost child. Hunting a murderer, she will follow the trail from northern China to Japan, while Bao follows doggedly behind. Navigating the myths and misconceptions of fox spirits, both Snow and Bao will encounter old friends and new foes, even as more deaths occur. This is a wonderful story, and I really, really like it, and I think it's really, really good. I just should have read it in winter, but it wasn't out yet. I will also say, for like a not content warning so much as vibe warning, this has the same mood and vibe, not the same plot, not the same anything else, but if you've ever seen or read Snow Falling on Cedars and My Life as Geisha, or any of those series of books, it has that same kind of atmospheric vibe where there's lots of you see the end of the Chinese Empire coming, you know that the Republic is coming, and then eventually into the communist period. So there's this weight in the novel of these characters that know that there's an end of the world. House of the Red Lantern, yeah, exactly. All of that kind of vibe, right? And it's even more so like this and how Snow Falling on Cedars, because they are both very much winter novels. They're set in a winter environment. Well, Snow Falling on Cedars only has a little bit of it, but you understand. So like this one, literally it begins with a dead body of a woman who's frozen to death in the doorway of a house, right? Like it starts with that very cold feeling, that very desolate vibe, and you're dealing with northern Manchuria and going through into northern Japan and then down through the rest of it, and it's bleak in an intentional way. It's not bleak like this is entirely depressing and I'm, where certain, authors can just make you feel depressed. It's bleak in a very winter style. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes people should know about it in advance. It is I think a very well-written novel. I mean, I thought it was very, very well written. The story was intriguing. The ending is unique. I'll just leave that there. And I feel like if you have any enjoyment in Chinese history or Chinese and Japanese mythology and religions, this could be very good for you. Really great novel. It takes some assumptions that you have to have, like a kind of basic, not really assumptions that you would understand, like the fox spirit reality, but the assumption, because there's a lot of things that are not quite addressed, but also at the same time not intentionally not explained for plot reasons. So I think someone who doesn't have an understanding of Chinese history could still appreciate this and really, really enjoy it. If you do have an understanding of Chinese history and what exactly is going on in 1908 in China, and what's about to happen with the last emperor, that's it. You might get a little bit more out of it. I will say there are very intriguingly footnotes, but the way this book is formatted is to intentionally remind the reader of a Chinese text. The author's name is always on the vertical side on one side, the book's name is on the other side, it's inset, so a lot of way, even though if you're reading an English model, and then the footnotes are in the margin, right? They're margin notes, really. And if you, it's, I think it's very intentional. It's very well written. I really, really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people will enjoy it. But you might enjoy it more in a colder, you know, when it's colder out, if you're kind of that kind of vibe reader. Um, so there you go. Yeah, it's, so I think it, I really recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Um, I will definitely have to go look for this author's other novels to see what happens. And Cold Drake's like, reading a cold book in the winter? Gasp. Does someone want to read a hot book? I mean, it's a hot book in one sense. There's, you know, hot mystery, but are cold dead bodies. I mean, welcome in, welcome in. So yeah, so I read those. Um, Definitely recommend both. We'll probably um, want to look up, what is the next book in? Oh, what is the other? The Ghost Bride and Night Tiger by Yang Chu, and oh, the Laura Jo Roland, not Shogun. I have it on my list. Oh, hold on, hold on. I know exactly what mystery series you're talking about. It's on my story graph. Hold, please. It's not Shogun. It's Shinju. Shinju is the author of is that series that you're talking about. They're very hard to find now, by the way. Koldrick is talking about a detective novel series set in feudal Japan, and it has some really great, interesting history. Also, a lot of very interesting discussion of cultural practices. And Laura Joh Roland is a Japanese American. She's a very prolific author. Like, she writes so much. And the Sano Ichiro books, which is the character of this Japanese mystery series, and she's also written a bunch of like English Regency period novels, because why be bound to one side of your culture? But yeah, I really like I really like Shinju. Shinju is great. Um, so yeah, so like I said, I've only been reading a little bit of fiction, just these two in the last week or so, um, because I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, specifically history, and not really any major books, although I will have to find them. I've been reading a lot of articles and breakdown, because I am preparing for the next game I'm going to run on the channel. And if you know me, and you know any of the things that I like to run on the channel, I like to... Oh, look, I run a lot of history stuff. If you've missed out on anything, you can check it over on the YouTube. All of those VODs are nice, neat playlists, so you can go and watch them. But the last experiment I did was Carousel Court. We had a lot of fun with that, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I am working on the background history and getting things ready for a Vampire the Masquerade Dark Ages campaign. And Dark Ages campaigns is going to be set in Sicily in the 13th century. 1213, I believe, is the date. Right? Is that? I can look it up. Where are you? And there's very specific dates in Vampire the Masquerade Dark Ages that become very relevant because of things that happen and where they put certain historical figures. And yeah, we're in the 13th century, but specifically what date? Where did it go? But they give us, the nice thing about Vampire the Masquerade is a lot of these older books give you a whole bunch of sources that they were dealing with. And specific sources that they were focused on. So I've been reading through a bunch of those. So, Vampire... no, I will be the GM in this Vampire game. So, Vampire... Dark Ages is great, but there are two editions... Well, so there's Vampire the Masquerade Revised, and then there's Dark Ages, and then there's 20th Anniversary Dark Ages. So, and they move the year point by 100 years, or 50 years or something. And so, which is important because, okay, so in 1230 is when we're going to be setting it, because we're going to be using Revised, and it's, well, specifically, it's fun that you talk about Vikings. So you could have Viking vampires in this time period. It's a little late because it's 1230, and that's a little bit after the major Viking incursions that far south. It's possible, it's just not likely. But we are setting it in Sicily. So Constantinople has been fallen. The Ottoman Turks have taken Constantinople. You know, the Fourth Crusade, you know, has happened. We've got whole bunches of things. There's tensions happening in the Iberian Peninsula, tensions happening in Greece, tensions happening along the Holy Roman Empire, that only the Germans call it that. And so spending a lot of time reading history for the time period. And because of that, we are going to be, I'm running this campaign, or this story, in such a way that there will be two different groups, one set in Palermo, one set in Syracuse on Sicily. And at this point, technically, Sicily belongs to the Holy Roman Empire. Technically. In the sense that technically that they collect taxes, but they don't actually do a whole lot on the island, and they don't really care. Let me rephrase that. They care a lot about the money and the, you know, wheat and grain on Sicily. They don't really care about anything else out of Sicily at the time. So you were having a lot of going on. things going on. And then there's a lot of tensions happening between the caliphate and the two caliphates across North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. You've got the rising of the beginning of the push of the against Castile and Aragon are going against the Andalus Moors. You've got a lot of rising tensions there. You've got rising tensions coming from England and France. No surprise there, because John is an ass. There you go. But all of this is to say, at this point in history, there is no masquerade. You don't have the Camarilla. You don't have the Sabbat. You have the high clans and you have the low clans. And because of that, you have a lot of interesting things that happen. There is no masquerade because there isn't a lot of hiding. Everybody believes in vampires. They know that vampires exist. There are vampire, and like other feudal societies at the time, vampires have set up their own feudal lords. So there are kings and emperor, there are lords to whom city princes have sworn allegiance, and there are lords who over vast territories of Western Europe and North Africa who control vast swaths of territory and have vampire princes from all of these major towns and cities sworn to them fealty. Which leads to a lot of more interesting, now you don't have a society, you're not looking at a period when the masquerade must be protected. You're not looking at where vampires are myth or story. Humans know that vampires exist and that they know that they're a danger and try to avoid them. But at the same time, then you've got people who also know that these very, very powerful and very, very old vampires do exist, and they're there to be you either have to deal with them politically or you have to avoid them. What are you going to do with them that are there? So a lot of these kind of politicking is going to happen. It's also going to be very interesting to see in which the players deal with these tensions. So Goths are not always Germanic tribes. Technically, a bunch of Goths are... So Visigoths are technically quasi-Germanic, but they're actually more... a little bit different. Yeah, so... Vlad Tepes is not a person that exists yet. Vlad Tepes is a very interesting historical figure, but we're not dealing with him. We are set firmly in 1230, which means we've got the rise of the Ottoman Turks and the Caliphate to the east. You've got the tensions rising in the west. And you're on an island that is literally home to the largest wealth of food production in Europe, both at the time and historically and going forward, basically until the 20th century. Sicily is the breadbasket of the Mediterranean, and its control has always been hotly contested. And part of that control being hotly contested has always been rulers from an outside. The Romans and the Greeks, the Greeks were technically there first, then there are a bunch of pirates, and then the Romans come, and they acknowledge that the way that you need to control Sicily if you're going to control the shipping lanes from North Africa to Europe. The Venetians, who are doing most of the shipping at this point over the sea, basically everything would be coming across the Silk Road, getting to the Holy Land and either Istanbul or Constantinople in the north, or Jordan and Alexandria further south, and would then be taken, and all of the ships that are moving all of those goods and all of the crusaders and all of the Everything coming out of there are run by the Venetians. The Venetians have massive amounts of money now. And at the same time, you've got Sicily, which is vitally important for all of the, vitally important for the control and production of food, and is owned by the Holy Roman Empire, but isn't really. Because the Holy Roman Empire only takes taxes, but it doesn't actually station any. There are no landowners that are there. There's none of the rulers of, what do I think it's Frederick? Yeah, Frederick II has never actually been to the island ever. There, as Coldrake does mention, there is the Papal Inquisitions of the 1230s. We're not quite there yet, because technically that will happen in a couple of years, and we're starting in 1230. But yes, so in Vampire the Masquerade Revised, Dark Ages Revised, you could play just Vampire the Masquerade Dark Ages, but because this is a World of Darkness game, Revised Dark Ages, there is rules and conflict sets for, what is it? The Dark Ages. So Dark Ages Basics, the Dark Ages Basic Rules is designed so you could play, to give you a supplement rule book for Dark Ages Mage, Dark Ages Werewolf, Dark Ages Inquisitor, because you didn't have Hunter, you had Inquisitor, and Dark Ages Fae, or Dark Ages Vampire. So this book, this setting was the assumption at this point you could play Mage, Werewolf, Inquisitor, which was Hunter at the time, or Fae, which was Changeling, in the same world and have it bleed together. You could have this kind of interesting tension arise from that. Beyond that, I'm not going to say anything much about it because, spoilers. But we are going to be doing 2 groups, alternating weeks, and then periodically we will have a couple guest appearances from princes of various other places around the Mediterranean, who might have other established things that are going on. Just saying. So yeah, there's a lot of history for me to be paying attention to. Yeah, so it goes from 1197 to 1230 to 1242. We're playing in 1230. We're playing in 1230 just because I think that is the most... I've done a lot of research right now about the actual historical things that are going on at the point, and it gets a nice balance of interesting, I think, in my opinion, quote-unquote juicy points of history that we can play with, and let my players have some fun, as they say. Fun times. But that is what we're going to be doing starting in July. I'm not ready to make any further fancy announcements, just this is, so I've been spending a lot of time reading history about the 1230s, which has been interesting. It's also been interesting to kind of look at, because Dark Ages Vampire was published in 2002, and they have a bunch of interesting historical references um, that you could then go back and read. And their historical references are slightly dated, both at the time of its writing, but now also severely dated now. But it's interesting to look at what happens. Um, yeah, you could. There's some interesting indirect history you could learn from Dark Ages. Um, you could definitely look at a lot of the references that they're talking about. Specifically, like they. One of the things I've always appreciated was the resources that a lot of these TTRPG books, specifically White Wolf and then and Wizards of the Coast put in their books to kind of say, here's some references that you might like. Very interesting kind of oddball sources, and maybe reading more Cadfile or just watching the series. And yes, I may have watched a bunch of episodes of Brother Cadfile Mysteries because Brother Cadfile. Also, really enjoyed Derek Jacobi in that series. Exactly. If you are used to American history, there's this rough period of when you get to the medieval period and the fall of the Roman Empire. We kind of briefly talk about the Crusades in the Crusades, and then focus on England. A lot of England. Oh wait, some France. Here's a little bit of France. Oh wait, here comes the Renaissance. We need to talk about Italy again. And you're like, okay. There's a whole lot going on. There's a whole lot of more interesting things going on. Let's put some things going in. So yeah. So I'm going to be very circumspect about other stuff. Don't want to get too detailed for, reasons. But yeah, it should be fun. It's going to be a relatively short campaign. Even alternating weeks, it should be a relatively short campaign. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I like Dark Ages, and I don't get to play in Dark Ages all that much. Plus, there are vampires. And I'm still on a vampire kick. But I think this is the appropriate point to take the break. And look, Faye, I'm not gonna say that Dark Ages might also, there might also be a period like that of my time for Dark Ages, but that actually makes sense, Faye. I appreciate that one. Yeah. Anyways, so we're gonna take a break for the evening, stretch, bio, get up, refresh yourself. I am going, and when we come back, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and a little bit fun. So we'll see, and I'll see you in a little bit, everybody. Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you're stretched, refreshed, all of that good stuff, and are ready to have a little bit more fun. So, there's this thing going around called the mid-year book tag, and I was like, okay, this could be fun. This could be an interesting chat. And I was like, okay, this could be a really interesting kind of look through what I've read and, thought about for the year and, kind of go from there, right? And I think that'll be a good kind of way to go. Okay. For 2024. Okay. And I'm going to use my story graph stats to answer these tag questions. And this will be very, very difficult because I'm looking at some of these going, wow, okay, so these are not geared for the kind of reader that I am, but we'll try. We will try. Okay. So, let us go all the way back to the beginning of the year. Make sure I haven't forgotten anything. No. Okay. It goes all the way back to January. Okay. What is the terminal airspeed of an English sparrow? Carrying a coconut or not? But so the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2024? And that's hard because I've read a lot of really great books. And this is not accurate because there's a couple things missing, but according to my story graph, I've read 46 books since the 1st of January. And that's not actually correct. There's a couple books. There's a bunch that aren't on here, and that's interesting. I need to go and fix that. But, so what is the best book I read in 2024? Oh, this is hard. And I think, yeah, there's a bunch of books that aren't on here, which is why I'm like, see, the problem with Storygraph is if you don't update the date correctly when you complete it, it doesn't add it for the right year. You can just say completed and it doesn't have a date, so it doesn't say that it was completed this year. So I have to go back and fix that. So I'm going to limit it to new book. Favorite new book that I've read this year, I'm going to say, something that was not a reread. I'm going to say Hall of Smoke. Hall of Smoke or A Crane Among Wolves. Hall of Smoke or Crane Among Wolves. Those are my top choices at the moment. Yeah, we'll go with that. Hall of Smoke or Crane Among Wolves. Crane Among Wolves is literally, I finished it and I was on I was putting a bunch of live videos, reactions on my Instagram story while I was reading this book. Read it an entire afternoon. Had so many emotions about it. Absolutely love it. I have now read 2 of June Her's books, and I need to go read the other 2. And appreciate the wealth of knowledge that she puts into these historical Korean fiction. And A Crane Among Wolves is absolutely wonderful. I am still thinking about that book. I will always, I'm constantly thinking about that book. I have said publicly on and am very much a strong voice on Instagram that we need pins and or stickers to say I survived chapter 42, because if you know, you know, and if you don't know, don't spoil it for anybody. Read that book, and when you get to chapter 42, you will have emotions, and it's fine, in the best possible way. And then you've got Hall of Smoke, where you've got Hessa is just a mess. She's a mess, and violent, and a mess, and you just... So many things are going on with that woman, and that girl needs a lot of... I'm here for both of them. Dangerous Assassin, Coldrake, that's Elizabeth Wheatley is the author of that series, which is also love that series. But this is the problem, right? Like, I read books and I enjoy them and I love them, and you're like, what is your favorite book? Exactly. Very is correct. What is the answer to life? 42. Somebody actually broke down the fact about why 42 would actually be the perfect answer and not just a random answer to what the question was. It's great. About how it is a mistranslation from binary. Wholly put this into. So my top 2, oh god. But then I also really enjoyed Catherine Reynolds' series. And Catherine Reynolds' whole series of the Fey Realm. Oh my god. I can't answer the best book question. Moving on. The best sequel I've read so far. I'm also gonna... Crap. Okay, so the best sequel I've read so far this year. I'm going to say... The Queen's Shadows by Catherine Reynolds, The Fey Realms, which is book 4, or Dangerous Sorceress, which is book 4 of the Dangerous Assassin Elizabeth Wheatley series. And then Bone Ship's Wake, which is the conclusion to the Bone Ships trilogy. Look, there are 3 very different kind of series, right? Oh, that's what's not on here. Thank you, Coldrake. None of the Parveen... Was Parveen in December? I didn't read all 4. Did I read all 4 in December? I must have read one earlier than that. Parveen, none of the Parveen mysteries are in here. That's what that part was missing. Look, these are really hard questions, and I read a lot. My problem is, like, they're best sequel you've read, and a bunch of these are very obviously for people who either A, don't read all that much, or don't read quite as much as I do, or don't read as many series as I do, because that's a problem, right? Like that, like if you're reading series and you're me and you're a completionist, you're gonna read the whole series, and then it's the question of which is the best sequel, and you're like, well, I've got where's book 5 of Catherine? Like, see, that's the other thing is like, okay, I know I read all, oh, because Catherine Reynolds' book 5 is not out yet. I'm waiting patiently for that. That's what's happening. So book 4, which is the Queen's Shadows, that had the moment, right? Like there's a death scene in that book that's on a battlefield, which is literally an emotional gut punch because you see it all from a distance, from another character's perspective, just watching and knowing that the character that they are watching is going to die, and you have this emotional experience through oh, it's so much going on there. Hey, Very, are you reading Anita Blake? How much Anita Blake are you reading? No judgment here. I've read a lot of it. I've read a lot of Anita Blake. Okay. New release you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, this is a little easier. A little bit, because that means I'm going to my to be read pile and to a new release. And new release that I haven't read yet but I really want to. Sound the Gong, which is book 2 in the Joan He duology. First one is Strike the Zither. The second one is Sound the Gong. It is a young adult. It is a young adult retelling of a portion of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Hey, Hawkeye, welcome in. Thank you for bringing your crew on over. We appreciate you. So Sound the Gong is the sequel to Strike the Zither. It is Strike the Zither and Sound the Gong are actually a duology that the author really conceived as a single novel, but the editor strongly and the publisher really encouraged her to publish them because they're young adult as 2 separate novels, because young adult, but it's a Romance of the Three Kingdoms retelling with some gender flip involved. And if you know anything about the Romance of the Three Kingdoms in Chinese literature, you know that it will not end well, but I'm really looking forward to reading that. I'm really looking forward to reading that. Also, like, half of my TBR are new releases that I'm looking forward to reading. So, like, that doesn't seem fair. Like, another one that I'm really interested in picking up, and waiting until the library gets it, is The Monsters We Defy. Very, are you reading? Oh, God. Hold on. I'm going to talk about Monsters We Defy, and then I'm going to come back to this, because if you're that early in Anita Blake, oh, you have some things that are going to be happening for you. So The Monsters We Defy is a 1920s flapper novel set in a magical realism in DC, and it is a black kind of historical fantasy novel. Clara Johnson talks to spirits, a gift that saved her during her darkest moments in a Washington, D.C. jail, now a curse that left her indebted to the cunning spirit world. So when the Empress, the powerful spirit who holds her debt, offers her an opportunity to gain her freedom, a desperate Clara seizes the chance. The task? Steal a magical ring from the wealthiest woman in the district. we get 2 times the stream. Um, the task: steal a magical ring from the wealthiest woman in the district. But Clara can't pull this daring heist alone. She'll need help from an unlikely team, from a jazz musician capable of hypnotizing with a melody, to an aging vaudeville actor who can change his face, to pull off the impossible. As they encounter increasingly obstacles, a dangerous spirit interferes at every turn, and the conflict in the spirit world begins to leak out into the human one. And along DC's legendary Black Broadway, a mystery is unfolding, one that not only has repercussions for Clara, but all the city's residents. So, yes. I am going to be enjoying reading this. I am sorry that you can't stream tonight, Hawkeye. I saw the glitches. Very, very apologetic for that. So, very. Guilty Pleasures is a also, it is a strip club in the Anita Blake universe. It is also one of the titles of the novels. It is I have read them all. I have opinions about this romantasy genre, and being like, y'all, Anita Blake did not come for us from our urban fantasy early 2000s and told us no. And did not... Sarah J. Maas wishes she was Laurel K. Hamilton. Yeah, I've had that problem too, Hawkeye. I had to manually force it from OBS and Twitch to fix it. And manually enter it. So, I recommend, if you read Anita Blake, you stop at about book 6. Maybe 7. But really, do not go beyond that. And the reason is, while the other books have interesting plot and development and characters and politics that are involved and a little bit of romance and quote unquote spice, after book 6, 7, we've jumped the shark and we are full into Anita is not the same person anymore, and I hate her as a character, but I love all of the other characters around her, and I find her becoming abusive and justifying her abuse based on what has happened to her. Well, don't want to spoil it, but an event that happens that causes her to change as a fundamental biology, and using her fundamental biology to justify the abuse that she puts into other characters, versus the first 6 books, which actually I think are really kind of good. They're really kind of really strong quasi-mysteries. The world is interesting. I like the characters. That's my personal opinion on the Anita Blake and Laurel K. Hamilton. I like Laurel K. Hamilton's other series. Again, the first couple books are better than the rest. If you like those kind of urban fantasy, romance fantasy, what existed before the romantasy genre gets taken over by the Sarah J. Maas and the Rebecca Yarros and those kind of romance fantasy authors, and instead you had Laurel K. Hamilton and Sherilyn Kenyon and what's her name? Catherine Madison? Poopies. Why can't I remember? Yeah, no, oh God, why? Karen Marie Moning, Kim Harrison, um, Faith Hunter. If you like the Jane Yellow Rock series, actually, I think Jane Yellow Rock is actually a really good series. I actually prefer Jane Yellow Rock to Anita Blake. Tanya Huff, Patricia Briggs, like all of these long running, established women authors who kind of straddle the line for fantasy and romance for decades, who, yeah. There you go. But yes, I'm looking forward to your opinion. I like the vampire mythos in the Anita Blake series. I like the what they do with the vampire mythos, and it's very obvious if you've ever played any Vampire the Masquerade that Laurel K. Hamilton and is writing in a almost writing. Wow, now that I think about it, Anita Blake could almost be a figure in a World of Darkness, game. And the entire all of what's going on in St. Louis through that book series could just be one of the worst LARPs ever. I'm just saying. I don't know that I agree with that. That is a rumor that's been going around for a very long period of time that Laurel K. Hamilton was co-writing the first early novels with her husband, and then they got divorced and things changed drastically. And I don't know that I agree with it as the sense that he was the one doing all the writing and that she didn't do anything and that's why they're so bad, versus I do agree that there was probably a lot of back and forth for them. And you're like, if you're an author and you're at home and you're talking about romance novels, that could be losing her sounding board, as Coldrake said, but it could also just be, an emotional response to a bad breakup and writing romance novel, a very romance novel, a romance heavy setting. It also could just be you got to a point where you're like, you should have ended the series and then you didn't. And I think that's the bigger, like at book 6 or 7 is really where I feel that happened, because it was a classic example of you're making a lot of money off of this series and you're writing a character who has a very complex polyamorous relationships. Like, Anita Blake is complex love polyhedral, the character, for a lot of reasons. And I don't want to spoil it because, like, if you're in the middle of reading the first book, it can be very interesting. And I really enjoyed the first couple books. I thought they were well written. So I don't want to give too much away, but Anita becomes her relationship becomes complicated. Becomes the definition of complicated. Like, so many complications. So, and as Coldrake says, a divorce can change your mind about romance, and that probably had a bunch to do with it, and probably just a whole bunch of things that are going on. I mean, lots of things can change your author's mind about how they want to write and what they want to write about. So the next question is most anticipated release for the second half of 2024. I'm going to cheat and say book 5 in the Fey Realm series by Catherine Reynolds. Because that's really the only book I know is coming out in the second half of 2024. Like, I don't... Oh, that's not... That or book 2 in the... Book 2 in the by Jennifer Penner, the Add and Share series, which is coming out, which is so book 1 is the Fellowship of both of these are independent authors. You can find them on Amazon. A Fellowship. Book 1 is A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, which in book 2 is coming out in the fall. And book 2 is A Fellowship of Librarians and Dragons. I want you to just look at this title. Look at this. Look at this. Why did that not change? There we go. Look at that. Isn't that cute? A Fellowship of Librarians and Dragons. It's a little teacup-sized fairy dragon, and this is a dwarf whose magical power, and if you can just see here, she's got a magical tea. She makes tea. She makes magical beverages and she drinks tea. Book 1 is A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, which is really, really great. It came out last year. It's the Great British Bake Off meets cozy fantasy novel. Burble and enthusiastic consent is a plot point, but and while it is technically a fantasy romance, a big part of this series is also about the strong female friendships that are made between the competitors in this. Also, gay orc dads who live next door, and I just want more about the gay orc dads. I need more about the gay orc dads who live next door, one who is a carpenter and the other who owns the bookstore. Okay? Okay. So those are my two. The last book in Catherine Reynolds' Fey Realm series, and the next book in the Addenshire, A Fellowship of Librarians and Dragons. There we go. That's what I need. One cozy fantasy and one myth fantasy style book. But other than that, I'm not really paying attention to what's going to be traditionally published, so I don't know, I don't get excited about things that are going to be traditionally published. I just kind of be like, oh, something's going to be happening, let me throw that on my TBR. And what was the book that most recently somebody was talking about? Oh, there's a proof positive that I read way too much not English. I read a lot of very much not American-centric writing styles. So Sarah Reese Brennan is releasing a book called, and apparently she has written a bunch of other stuff, but she is currently releasing a book Hello, is that what I think it is? And the title of the book is Long Live Evil. Okay? Long Live Evil. Stop me if you've seen and or read this before. Her fictional crush is the villain, and he's about to meet his match. Ray is a bookworm who prefers fictional men over real-life boyfriends. But her life takes a strange turn when she's trapped by magic inside her favorite fantasy series, and she finds herself pitted against her suddenly living and breathing crush, the once and forever emperor. In a palace on the brink of war, she has become the villainess in his tale, and she needs to take control of the narrative before it and the Emperor take control of her, fatally. This is... Props to Pope! This is an isekai. This is an isekai novel written by an American author for an American audience. And I'm like, I've got a stack of webtoons over here. And then I've got a pile of Danmei novels over here. Because we can also talk about a bunch of other things. So, you know. I'm like, wait, the Americans are writing our own isekai novels? And I'm like, and I'm trying really hard to be like, okay, they've got, and they're pinging all of the full-on, I'm isekai'd into the villainous. I've isekai'd into this. And you're like, it's my life as the villainous, but from a Western perspective. And you're like, oh yes. And because the other thing you can put in on StoryGraph is you can add content warnings, and readers can add content warnings, and authors can add content warnings. And so they can be broken up into graphic, moderate, or minor, right? Like, and graphic: death, torture, injury, misogyny, classism, terminal illness, sexism, violence, murder, blood. Moderate: emotional abuse, toxic relationship, toxic friendship. No shit. And you're like, oh, it's just a straight up isekai romance, and you're falling in love with the villain. Okay. I'm here for it. I am here to see what happens. Yeah, no, Pope, no spoilers, but given the fact that it also includes content warnings for fatal illness and fatal illness and cancer, I believe we're going the route of she's dying and is getting sucked into the book when she's dying of disease. So there are your two options to be isekai'd. One, you get hit by a truck, or number two, you dying, wasting disease in a hospital. And considering it's a female main character, you're more likely to have the wasting disease in a hospital versus the male main character who gets hit by a truck. If we're going by traditional Japanese isekai and or other Korean, other East Asian cultures doing isekai. I'm like, really, y'all? This is gonna happen. Okay, so those are the two most anticipated releases: Catherine Reynolds and Jennifer Penner. The biggest disappointment, I'm going to say, the biggest disappointment of oh god, what's the title of the book? Yeah, so for me, the biggest disappointment was the duology by Su Lin Tan, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and the sequel, Heart of the Sun Warrior. And for me, I think it's... no, it's not books 2 and 3 of Red Rising. Books 2 and 3 of Red Rising were fine. Or we're okay, but Daughter of the Moon Goddess was the most disappointing because it was the one I was most excited about, right? Like, I was really, really excited about it. I thought it was a gorgeous cover. I really like Chinese Shinja and Chinese period and mythology, and it was, a nominee for Best Fantasy in Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Fantasy and Best Debut Novel. and I did not care for it because that was the book, that was the series that, or the duology, excuse me, that I felt was too rushed. That should have been a series. That needed longer to sit, and that was the book that um no, we're talking about disappointment, Coldrake. I was not disappointed by anything that happened in the Anne Leckie series. Um, yeah, I was not disappointed in anything in the Anne Leckie's ancillary series. Well, the end was not as strong as the beginning, in my opinion, but it was still good. But the Daughter of the Moon Goddess was, it felt to me like a script treatment instead of a novel, because I felt things that were should have been, at least, you know, it could have been just stretched out, were very, very shortened, right? We were condensing in a lot and editing in a lot, and I felt there could have been more in those moments. Particularly one that really stood out to me was very early in the series. You know, we're doing this thing where we're highlighting, you know, how much she's learned about um, archery, and it's supposed to be this big archery contest against the prince and the crown prince, and, you know, showing off how great she is and how much she's learned. And, you know, it's a 3-shot thing, and it's a paragraph, right? Like, it's a paragraph, and that should have been like, if I picture this as a drama, I'm seeing this as like, you know, you can see this as in like half an episode at least, and it felt like book was very, this would have been a 60, 70 episode drama, but isn't getting that kind of full depth in the book itself. So I'm going to say that's the biggest disappointment for me in this year's reading. Biggest surprise. And they don't give you like a definition of what they mean by surprise, or they're, you know, so it's not disappointment, okay, but surprise. What is the biggest surprise I read? I'm going to say the biggest surprise is What the River Knows by Isabella Benyes. Yeah, exactly. Is it good surprise? Is it bad surprise? Is it snorted your drink mid-sentence? I'm going to say the best surprise was What the River Knows. And I really, because I really, really enjoyed that setup, that world building. It definitely is a young adult novel. It could have, it's not perfect by any means. And then you get to the end of that book and you're like, okay. You get to the epilogue and there's a paragraph, and then there's a screw you paragraph. Yeah, I'm going to say that's the biggest surprise, because nothing else on here is really a surprise, really. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm going to have to go with. Yeah, so I figured a bunch of stuff that's in here is not updated. And the reason it's not in the right place is because I didn't put the dates in when I finished it. There we go. That's a problem. But new favorite author. Oh, this is hard. New favorite author, Junher or R.J. Barker. There we go. Make that real easy. Junher or R.J. Barker. Um. So the next question is newest fictional crush, and I have a problem with this. So, because I don't get crushes on fictional characters a lot of the time the same way. For me, it's very obviously like I enjoy the writing of the characters, and if it's a well written character, I enjoy the way in which the author portrays any relationships that that character has, positive or negative. And so it really becomes for me a little bit complicated to say, like, oh, I have a crush on a character, right? And I don't think of it that way. I think of it instead. So, it's trying to figure out like what would we, what would like a fictional crush character actually be? Um, and that's really hard. So, um, I don't know. I don't think I have one. I don't think I have an answer in this question. And to answer your question, very Ghost in the Shell is an anime. It's straight up an anime, and in fact, the original source material is a really good anime. The movie, the live action film is okay. Didn't hate it. Preferred the original source material anime, but you know, I'm here for the adult massive murder. Um, newest. Let's skip the fictional crush. Fictional crush because it's not really a thing that I do. And instead, let's think. The next question is newest favorite character, and that is newest favorite character. Um, I don't know that he counts as. No, we'll go with this. Um, because technically it I bought them and then read them. I'm going to say um, I'm going to say uh, what's his name? God, this is hard. This is really hard. Um, Phaedrid from Phaedrid from Dangerous Assassin series, or um, mm, 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 mm. You know, I'll cheat, and it's not really a cheat. I actually do love him as a character. I think he's a very interesting, very complex character, and go with Wei Wuxian in Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. And be like, yep, there we go. Book that made you cry. Crane Hung Wolves. Crane Hung Wolves made me cry. And Foxwolf made me tear up a little bit. Some places. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Book that made you happy. Book that made me happy. I don't read happy. Sorry. Like, I'm sitting here going, wait, like that's a trick question, right? Like, I don't read happy. I read I read fantasy novels. Oh no, I know. Just Stab Me Now. That's a book I really enjoyed. Um Just Stab Me Now by Jill Barrett, which is romance of the uh, uh, Romancing the Stone meets one of my most favorite songs in Broadway history. And I still love the fact that this is an entire book, which is basically You're Nothing Without Me. And if you don't know that scene from City of Angels, God, you should just go listen to that song. And City of Angels, the musical, not. But yes, Just Stab Me Now. Now, technically, I can't. We're talking about 2024, right? And A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic I read in 2023. So this is we're focusing on 2024. So I can't put A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic on here, but I can put Just Stab Me Now on, and that's what I'm gonna go with, because yeah, I have a type. It's violence and murder and fantasy novels. There you go. The most beautiful book you've bought or received. Okay, hold on, hold that thought. Oh wait, hold on, I forgot one. Okay. 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 So I'm going to cheat again, and there will be 3 copies. But the first is Together We Burn. Hold on, I gotta turn off the green screen because otherwise. Together We Burn by Isabella Benez. This is her standalone fantasy set in fantasy Spain with magical flamenco dancers and dragon matadors. But look at this cover. Look at this cover with the fans and the Valencia oranges and the roses. Look at how pretty that is. This. So we've got that. We've got. Then we get. Then we get the pile that is and I'm only picking up volume 1, but technically all of the volumes of Heaven Official's Blessing are absolutely gorgeous. And considering that it's just one novel, it just happens to have multiple volumes in its English translation, because it is absolutely gorgeous, and the art is gorgeous. On the interior art is absolutely beautiful. Where is that image? Not that one. That one. So we got Together We Burn, Heaven Official's Blessing, and then Guardian. More Don May novel. And just, it's so pretty. It's so good. Hi, yeah, I buy pretty books. And I enjoy very pretty books that I get to read frequently. And but yeah, those, and it's also got the cover of A Crane Among Wolves, but I think those, you know, it's not quite as pretty as Together We Burn, although I do like it. Oh, and the cover. The cover, the app. Look, it's just the tag. It's just the tag. I limited myself. It's not an app. It's just a tag. And then the last question that says, I don't know how to answer this question, and I don't know what its criteria is. I don't know how it's being set up. But the last question on this book tag is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I'm like, A, thank you for making it plural, and B, need to read by the end of the year? That's a very complex question, right? Like, I don't necessarily need to read. So I'm looking at, like, what's on my TBR list. What do I need to read by the end of the year? I don't even know. I mean, like, that's the thing. I just need to read all of them. Like, I'm going to take Coldrake's answer. I'm going to need to read all of them. Or things that are on my TBR. I mean, just, I'm a person that needs to read books. What do you need to read to read all of, like, what the heck is kind of question is that? That's just a question that wants to torture you. Like, okay. So I'm like, okay, that makes very little sense. Like, I guess I need to finish like, what? I don't even know. I don't even know. So Yeah. I guess I need to read book 5 of or the last book in the Fey Realm series by Catherine Reynolds. I mean, like, what do I need to read? Like, there's nothing that tells me that I need to read something. I just need to read in my own head. I can't even. It's very odd. It's very, very odd. But I think that's it. I guess the question then becomes, what am I going to be reading for next week? Well, that is a question that we should let's think about what I can read for next week. Right? What can I read for next week? Well, I have to go to the library tomorrow and see what I can read for next week, because that's my other thing. It's like I read a lot of these out of the library, and so a lot of it is, what am I going to be able to pick up at the library? What does the library currently have? Hey, Lysander, welcome in. What what's on hold? All of these kind of things. So I guess I'll have to wait and put a post up on YouTube in the community tab about what I'm going to be reading. I'm think there's a lot of interesting stuff on my list at the moment. So I'll go from there, and then you never know. I might walk into the library and find something entirely not on my list at all, which has happened before. Oh, I do need to get the next 4 volumes of Heaven Official's Blessing so I can finish that. But I probably have to buy those because the library doesn't really have them. Because I finished Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. I finished Guardian. I've started Chapeau-Lang, which is Souls of Chaos? Stars of Chaos? Stars of Chaos is the English translation title. And then, I read volumes 1 through 4 of Heaven Official's Blessing, but they didn't have volume 5, so I didn't get the next 4, which I need to get so I can finish that series. No, Coldrake, I do not need to go back and read Clan of the Cave Bear. I've read it once. I don't need to read it again. Ever. Ever again. Like, there are people out there that are like, you should read this. And I'm like, no, thank you. I've done it. I've read it once. I'm good. But I think that's where we're going to end it for tonight, unless you all want to throw some questions at me about books in general. Because I was also thinking, what might be fun is to do like a tier ranking book stream of books that I've read or just in a genre or by an author or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I think that's where we're gonna end for tonight. Thanks everybody hanging out. Best time you've had with a mystery novel? Best time you've had with a mystery novel. Oh, hey, Jim. Welcome in. Ooh, that's hard. I mean, like, how are we defining time? Because, like, I have a really great time reading the Praveen novels, but not always for, like, the mystery is pretty good. I don't always like Praveen. I really, really enjoy the Brother Cadfael novels for a variety of reasons. I liked T. Kingfisher's, T. Kingfisher in general. I think the best time I've had with a mystery novel was probably reading Cadfael on the summer reading of Cadfael on the back porch, nice light breeze, and just enjoying Cadfael. Um, it's all good, Ver. We understood. Yeah, I understand why that's a problem sometimes if it's not the easiest language. But I think the Hoopla, is it Hoopla or Libby? One of the two. The apps that for digital books, and I guess now Libby also does audiobooks through libraries, and I believe Libby you can get in Canada. I don't know if it's all of Canada or just the English provinces in Canada. But yeah. So Crit asks, by the way, what are you using library article resources for your research? Oh, for the Dark Ages vampire game research? I'm mostly using JSTOR. So if you don't know what JSTOR is, if you're an academic, there is an online archive of journal articles that's been digitized. It's called JSTOR, JSTOR. And before COVID, you had to have either be on an academic campus or have an academic library card. And with since COVID, Drake, you can now access JSTOR remotely with a limited number of article downloads per month, even if you don't have an institutional IID. They've really opened up access since COVID. You can get a lot of access that way. There's also Project Muse, which is another one that I use. But that's more classics oriented. It's a little bit helpful for Dark Ages stuff, particularly if I'm looking at like Byzantine period. But 1230 is after the fall of Constantinople, so you aren't really dealing with Byzantines as much. I understand that, Lysander. That's why I've actually really got into using Storygraph, because it's really easy to use and keep things updated and easy to search and find what I'm, which book I'm wanting to recommend and reminding people about. Other great thing about Storygraph is as a lot of people want to talk about, is that it is created by a Black woman programmer, and it is not part owned by Amazon, so support Black women and owned businesses in general, but Storygraph in particular. Yeah, so a lot of the research I'm doing for this upcoming vampire game is through JSTOR specifically. So I'll actually just put the link because they have an app. Here, I'll put the general link in the chat, because they do have a web page, an online web version, but they also have the app, which is what I really enjoy using. But it's very, here, I can show you. So this is my homepage, what I'm currently reading, what my TBR is. Here, look, you want to see what my TBR looks like? 41 books on the TBR, sorted by latest added. And you can add it to your up next, which just means you're going to put it on your most recent TBR. You can then put it on read, currently reading, did not finish, or remove book, as in, which I use frequently, particularly because a bunch of these I get because I hear about them, and then I go into the library and be like, hey, do you have this book? Okay, let me do my first page test, let me see. And then if I want to click on profile, currently reading, recently read, to read, mainly reads, you know, reading preferences, no, stats, here we go. And then this is like, you have the books that you read, and it breaks down adventurous, mysterious, dark, emotional, tense, funny, lighthearted, and challenging. I read very little lighthearted. That's not a surprise. Then you get your pace, mostly medium, fast, kind of slow. I don't know that I agree with that, but whatever. Page numbers. I read a lot of fantasy. It's a long chonkers. The genres and how they're broken down and how many books. Again, this is authors, how that's broken down. You can see that I haven't been putting as many books in the last couple months. I need to go back and fix that. And your ratings and which books you rated what. So I like it for its statistics, but I also like it for its ease of use. On the app, there is actually a barcode scanning function. And with that, you can add it automatically from there. Oh yeah, there's a lot that I haven't added recently, which I need to go back and do. Apparently. Or more accurately, I put a bunch in my read section that isn't, I didn't put dates on, so it's just randomly in whatever total raid. Which is a bigger problem. But, so, any other questions that anybody wants to know about? Because I'm gonna be seeing if there's anybody up to raid. I don't know that I like how they changed the raid function. Okay. But I don't see anybody I know, so we're just going to end it for tonight. Tomorrow, we are back with the penultimate, maybe the finale of Mass Effect: The Gathering Dark. There's a Thresher Maw. This could go well. This could go very, very badly. So, we'll find out tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the channel, where we will see what happens. And whether or not my Drell doctor can keep everybody alive against a Thresher Maw. Just saying. And then we'll probably be doing a couple more random streams. Definitely be back next Saturday for more book chatting. And more things, and I was about to say Monday for Montreal by Night, but we don't have any more Montreal by Night, and that is sad to me. Uh, but keep your eyes peeled because we're going to be talking about we are going to be talking specifically about the new Dark Ages campaign that I'm going to be running for Vampire in July. Want to talk, you might see some more announcements about that, and I'll probably have a couple pop-up streams here and there, maybe do some more chatting, more plotting. We'll see what happens. But again, yeah, I have to find something to do on Monday nights. I'm very upset. That's not something I know what's gonna happen. But anyways, have yourselves a wonderful evening all, and I'll catch y'all next time.